Hey everybody, it's Truck Stop Mixtape, and right now we have a very special interview with singer-songwriter, folk soul songstress, a superstar, Sam Stokes. Sam, come on!
Hey, Julia, thanks for having me on.
Thank you for being here. So many things happening for you right now, and so many crazy things. I just want to start off by talking about the first time I saw you perform, which was at Make Music Topanga.
Absolutely.
Um, and it was special to me because it was a big, crazy event with about 50 artists. It was an all day long thing, and you were the very first performer, and it was like 10 o'clock in the morning and just getting a coffee, and you couldn't have started it off better. I mean, I was just like, thank God this woman is playing right now because it's making me feel like it's going to be all right.
It was a beautiful day. It was a great day.
It was. And let's go back. Let's go back. Let's talk about how you got started in music. What gave you the bug? What made you become a singer?
Yeah. I mean, I was quite literally in my mother's womb while she was singing on stage like 3 days before I was born.
What?
And then like five days later, she was back on stage with me strapped to her. She actually had to stop wearing earrings because I would sit on like the little thing behind her, and I kept playing with her earrings, so she stopped wearing them because I was about to rip them out. So there was definitely, my parents are both musicians. They live the lives of artists, and they've gone that whole journey, and so they're definitely both great inspirations for me. And in that, I think is also, the interesting or the unique journey of finding your voice within. Like, I know a lot of my friends who are artists, they always describe being like the black sheep in a family of dentists or a family of lawyers, and they're the only creative one or the only. So it's interesting when every single person in your family is that, and then you kind of like, and so being then in a way also, I think, still the black sheep within that as well. But it's an interesting journey. So yeah, mine was definitely a baked in the oven sort of experience.
You were ready-made artist.
Yeah, basically.
Uh, you were a folk hot pocket, basically.
Basically, yeah, it was just it's ready to ding. Yeah.
Was
Yeah.
did you feel before you kind of set out to do this in a very intentional way? Did you feel pressure to do it? Did you feel like, well, I have to do this, or was it just something that was inspiring and all around you at all times?
To be honest, I rejected it for a while, and I pushed it away for a while because it was a very like, not because there was a pressure that I had to do it. It was more it was almost like this can't be that easy. Like, I want to go this path, and then you're gifted with the exact environment that would help us. It was just like, no, like, and I remember sitting at my piano maybe when I was 15 or something, and I was sitting there and I was like, oh, I should start writing music. And then I sat down and I was like, my life is so great, everything is fine. And then I got up from the piano and I walked away, and I was like, I in a way I felt like I was so grateful for having such a joyful introduction to the world and introduction to my life, but I also sincerely felt like I needed some sort of depth to my soul, if that makes sense. I needed some sort of experience or experiences that would help me understand humanity as a whole better. And inadvertently, I think I really did set the train rolling down the path that was, a good moment of suffering, and not in like um, I mean, self-inflicted energetically, I guess, not self-inflicted, directly, but
Yeah.
definitely there was this feeling of like, I need to understand compassion. Like, I need to understand humanity as a whole better. Like, I need to understand a lot of other things better because it felt like the tank that I could pull inspiration from was too shallow.
Yeah, yeah.
It wasn't anything that I could actually pull from. And so I think that's kind of why I distanced myself from music, because it was like, you got to like develop your soul and your life and your understanding of the world before you're going to have anything really you can write about, you know?
Completely. And I imagine distancing yourself from your family a little bit as far as trying to find your identity and who you were and
Sure.
growing up. Once things started kind of rolling, I know that you traveled a bit.
Yes, it did.
What took you? Where did you grow up first off, and where did you end up?
So I grew up in San Diego, and then I moved to Europe, which was always a fantasy that I had. And I actually lived there. And I did music out there, and I had a band there, and I did a bunch of stuff, and that was awesome. And it helped me definitely reignite that love and that connection.
Yeah,
And then I don't know if I ever told you this story in private, but I remember I was then in Germany, and I was at this place in my life, and I was like, okay, this is going well, but something just felt off. And I was like, something feels off. And it was the first time in my life that I was like in a meditative state in a yoga class. And I just saw all of these neon lights, like, you know, like the Las Vegas ones with the, like the lines around the dot, the light
yeah,
bulb.
yeah. The
It was like,
outlines, yeah.
but it was like 7 of them pointing to Los Angeles. And I grew up in San Diego, and I was like, oh no,
I'm not going to
no,
LA. Yeah, yeah.
we're but LA. Like, everyone from LA loves San Diego, but everyone from San Diego is like, you block us from the rest of California. We hate LA. So it wasn't a fantasy of mine. It was not like, oh, I can't wait to. I was like, no, screw LA. Like, I don't want to go there. Uh, but it was a very clear vision, and it was like, this is where you have to go. And it left me like immediately crying with my eyes closed, and I was like,
It's
whoa,
crazy.
okay, I don't know. And at the time, I didn't really know why or what it was to do. But you know, it's always been music.
So from Germany to LA, what were your first experiences in LA when you came back to California? I mean, as far as taking what you had learned in Europe and in Germany, and what were those differences? I mean, I can imagine that
Yeah.
being in a band or being an artist out there, especially coming to LA, which is kind of like weird and competitive in a different way. And
Yes.
how was it for you?
Um, I remember when I left Germany and came to LA, I had 2 questions for myself. Was, why am I doing this? What is my purpose? Why do I even want to go down this path? Like, what is my motivation for wanting to do this? And the second was, do I have anything that is genuinely interesting or anything to offer the world? You know, in any sort of, like in a very honest, like iconic, undeniable sort of way, it was like, is there anything here that I actually have to offer, um, or is this something, you know, that's a good hobby side gig sort of thing? And
That's I'm sorry to interrupt you because I find that that's like it's such a really cool, interesting thought because I feel like part of it is always like, no, you have a passion. This is like what I need to do. I want to do this. But to actually step back and go, wait a minute, does the world need me right now?
yeah, yeah, like, is
That's
there,
very brave and like very kind of raw and honest for you to kind of do that.
yeah, I
Sorry to
mean, because I
interrupt.
think the part of me too was like, this journey has a lot to it. There are easier paths to walk in life, right? So it was kind of like this conversation of like,
Straighter lines. Yeah.
yeah. But it was like, okay, you have the passion, you have the drive, you have the interest, but it was like, is the thing that you're offering going to be of any interest to anyone? And so those were my 2 questions, very open, very just exploratory. And again, in one of those moments in December of 2020, I haven't shared too much about this, and I won't go into the details, but My friend and I, we were sitting in his home one day, and the day before, this was right in the middle of the pandemic. It was right before the very first Christmas of the pandemic. So people were not sure, like there was no vaccinations at all yet. So no one knew, could they fly home for their families for Christmas? Like there was that kind of energy buzzing. And I remember this one day I was like, oh man, I don't feel good. Something bad's going to happen. Like, I don't know. And I really had this strong feeling. And then the next day I was like, no, it's a new day, brand new start. Like everything's great. Everything's good. And I went to my friend's house and I was like really intentional. And I was like, I got us lunch and I brought cappuccinos and I got dessert. And I was like, you're going to have a great day and work on all these things. And I won't go into the details of it, but we found his roommate deceased from a drug overdose. And it was textbook trauma. And I won't go into the details because it's not my intent to give any triggers or to give any thing to anybody that might be listening. But that moment, without a doubt, completely changed my entire life. And I remember we were sitting there and I was so glad, like literally in that moment, my entire heart was just filled with gratitude that I was there, that my friend wasn't alone. Like I was just so overwhelmed with like genuine. I was sitting in his garage, completely shaken. And the point was, in that moment, that's when my purpose came, because I was sitting there and I was a wreck, and I just kept watching person after person go in, medics, coroners, police officers, all these people that going in. And one police officer, the woman, she came out to me and she said, hey, I just want to make sure you don't go back in there, because the nature of the things that he was taking, he's going to look much worse than how you found him. So she was trying to protect us, and she was like, don't go in. And then I'm seeing people going in and out and in and out, unchanged faces. And I just thought to myself, how are they able to do this? And I thought, that's a real gift to society. I was like, that's a real service. I was like, I want to be a musician, I'm like, this is saving lives, or, helping in a time of crisis. And it was, and I remember sitting there, and then this is what I heard. And this was my purpose that came to me, from the cosmos, or whatever you want to call it. It was that, as an artist, it is my duty to live with my walls low, to be so sensitive, to be so open, to be so perceptive, because there are those people in the world who don't have that luxury. They have to live with their walls so high, because that house that night, they probably went to 3 or 4 other houses in LA that same night. And I just thought, man, these people have to function, have to live with their walls so high. And you think about all the nurses and doctors that were going through the pandemic, and you think about, it was so heroic, and it was so upsetting, I think, to see that or to feel that from other people in the world at that moment. But my realization was, it is my job to live with my walls low, so that I may feel and understand the human emotional experience, so that maybe in a 3-minute song, I can help someone who, let's say, had a night like that, and they're driving home and they hear my song on the radio, and they say, they feel something. They connect with their humanity. They reconnect and understand and realize they're not a robot, and they get to lower their walls for a minute, and then their walls come back up, and they can go inside and make dinner for their family. And that was like, that hit me really hard. And I was like, okay, that's why we're doing this. that's what this is for.
That's insane. Amazing. And I can only imagine the shock and the sort of transformation for you. I love that you're saying about the lowering the walls. I just kind of pictured that as an artist, we don't have walls, we just have fences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We just gotta keep our eyes open to like everything that's happening and open. Let's say this happened in the middle of the pandemic, right, early on, and you've come back to LA basically to the pandemic. How are you, from here on out, how are you figuring out how to be an artist? Because everyone is hit in different ways by the lockdown and everything, but to come into it as you're trying to figure out how to do what you're supposed to do, as opposed to having something that's been yanked away from you, like where you were playing regularly or doing something
Sure.
normally and ending. You're coming into this like, how how is that sort of applied to your growth or your journey, especially as we've been coming out the last year?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, I honestly found it was like the most incredible gift, to be honest, because, um, being able to just focus on that in a way, it was like you have nothing else that you're really able to focus on. So you just have to focus on your development as an artist. So I worked with different mentors, and I was doing a lot of production stuff, and I was learning how to produce, and then learning how to incorporate different instruments, and really finding that sound and finding that perspective and finding that songwriting style. So a lot of those skills and everything were really sharpened during the pandemic, which was great. So it was a wonderful opportunity to really just focus, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
without needing to translate anything immediately to any sort of live thing. It was like, take just focus on this, just focus on songwriting. So I did that, and I wrote, oh my gosh, so many songs, and I did a lot of collaborations. I worked with a lot of different people. I did different collaborative projects, and I worked with different artists, and I'd have some come over here and we work on different things, and that was fantastic. So there was a lot of, it was a very playful, joyful time, despite, obviously the figuring out that other thing that I just talked about. It was like that was happening at the same time that the most joyful time of my life was also happening. And there was this discovery and all of that. And so in a way, it almost felt like perfect timing of like coming here. Okay, this is the path we're going on, and I had some incredible mentors and people that I worked with. And then, yeah, it's really been then since maybe August or September, that there's been now a lot more of the emphasis on doing live shows. So I've been
Yeah.
playing a lot. I had a residency in Hollywood for a couple months, and been playing around and doing other things now too. So that's been great.
Let's talk about your music, and your vocal style. And I feel like you definitely embody a lot of the sort of 70s singer songwriter style, but there's something about you too that you have a like a feral edge that's like a 90s thing, like more like a indie rock thing that
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
comes out like around the
yeah,
corners of your songs. Does that make sense? It's like,
yeah, yeah,
so they you come across as very open and inviting, but there are sharp edges. Does that
yes,
make sense?
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a
what
beautiful way to
what like
think
what are
about
your
it. I love
influences?
that. I love that. I love that because it's interesting too. I think playing with that perspective of, what do we accept the female artist to be, right? And
Yeah,
sometimes we expect her to be either fully the sweetheart, right? Or she has to be fully the Joan Jett, right? And
yeah,
this, and both are fantastic, but I really do play with the masculine and the feminine, with the soft and the edge, with the loud and the quiet. Like there's a lot of dynamic within that because yeah, that's just what it is, and I go back to, some of my favorite artists. I mean, obviously the Beatles is like number one big influence. Big influence: Jimi Hendrix, Joni Mitchell, Stevie Wonder, of course, Stevie Nicks.
yeah,
So like obviously we're getting some 70s things there, but it's all most definitely of today. And
yeah,
I basically, the thing that I think what I appreciate about the 70s is that it was such a, I mean, it's incredible to think like how many artists that were like generation defining artists were existing at the same time. Like how many
hmm,
genres were existing at the same time. And and all with such loving messages, you know, like if you just hear their music, it was just, I think, genuinely so loving. And it was so, I had a mentor once describe that music or pop culture, you could say, and this is specifically within the US, but maybe worldwide, it kind of comes in these cycles of internal and external. So external would be like, let's say the 80s, where it's all about the body. It's very flashy. It's very big hair and
Yeah,
the
image conscious.
image conscious, right? It's very external. And the music therefore reflects external things. And then internal phases would be, of course, late 60s, 70s, where it was really about, so it's like the whole concept of intimacy versus sex, right? Sex is very external versus intimacy is very internal.
Yeah.
And so anyway, so you experience those different kind of waves. And of course there's those things intersecting at the same time. But I think we've definitely been in an external phase for a while, which is very sad. However, I am very hopeful that we are transitioning out of that. So that's why
Yeah.
I find timing to be just a beautiful thing, you know, because I think, you know, you hear certain songs now and there's certain things and you kind of see it and you're like, okay, it's all, you know, it's trickling down, it's trickling away. But, you know, I see more people journaling and reading paper books than ever before. I see more people putting their phones down and having intimate conversations with one another, you know, and I think that's where we're entering into. So anyway, so my music, the only thing that I say that is inspiring about the 70s is specifically not necessarily what they were doing sonically, although there was some great things, but it's more about what they were doing with their messages. That's what inspires me so much.
That's great. What about you released an album this past year? It
Yes.
was a collaborative effort with Casey Abrams
Yeah.
called Conscious Stars.
Mhm.
Very, very cool. And going to what you were talking about, very intimate, very internal, but at the same time, just kind of for the entire universe, you know,
Sure.
to relate to and reflect on with. How did that come about? How did you guys get together? How did you meet him? And how were you guys working on those songs to begin with?
Yeah. Casey is I think maybe my first friend I made in LA. I'm not exactly sure. We met just one. This is very embarrassing. I've told him this story, so I have no shame in sharing this publicly. We met at a hotel cafe, and we locked eyes and talked a couple times. But I already knew who he was. Of course, it's Casey Abrams. But I was like, I just want to be your friend. Like, I don't want to be a crazy fan. Like, I just want to like have a nice conversation. And I was like, well, if you come up and you're like the crazy fan thing, you know, you're just like, that's never gonna work. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's always gonna push someone away. And so it's like, I can't do that. So I was like, I don't know what to do. And then so I walked up to him and I was like, hi, have we met before? Oh, no, that's how you could tell I was very fresh in LA. It's like I would use that same line on Tom Hanks. I was like,
It was like a 70s pickup line.
I was like, oh my God, this is embarrassing. And Casey is like the most loving, amazing, kind individual. And so he played along and we had a great conversation. We talked for an hour. And then pretty quickly we became fast friends. We didn't do anything musically, but we became fast friends. Years later, I finally had the guts to tell him this story. And he was like, yeah, I knew. And I was like, oh, I was like, I'm so relieved. I was like, I felt so terrible. I just wanted to be your friend. I thought we would get along. So anyway, so yeah, so we just hung out basically and we'd go on hikes and do all sorts of stuff. And then during the pandemic, he went to live for like a year or something in Arizona with his family. So when he would come to LA and sometimes need a place to stay, I'd be like, oh yeah, you can, you know, come stay here, stay for a week, stay for a weekend, whatever. So he would come and just hang out and had an extra room. I was like, okay, go ahead, hang out. And then one night we were just jamming around and we were playing around. And then he we kind of like, I forget what the first song was, but it was so cool. And we were like, that's kind of nice. I don't know, let's try it. So then we started just recording, and I was working on production stuff. So I started recording everything. And then we had done maybe 2 songs at my place. Then he got an Airbnb, and then we did 1 song at that Airbnb. And then we were kind of this place where we were like, wait a minute, this is pretty cool. Like, and everything about our process was so playful and so in the moment that it was like, there's no point of us, like, there was no moment of like, let's rehearse a song and then record the song. It was like the creation and the composition and the orchestration and the lyrics and the production was all happening simultaneously. So we would sit down and say, okay, let's just see what happens. And then 4 or 5 hours later, an entire song was done, like 90% done. And we were like, whoa, that was cool. And that just kept happening. So then we went on like a retreat for a week or something up in Idlewild, and then recorded a bunch there. And then finally, after that retreat, then we kind of had the whole album. We were like, this is pretty nice. This is pretty nice. Yeah.
So that was released this past year. Was it November?
August last year.
Yeah. Oh, it's August. Okay. And what about Sam Stokes solo?
Yes.
What about your Solitary Fire?
Yeah, I have quite a few songs, and I have quite a few finished recordings and finished products and things like that. I was talking to a friend of mine. He's a visual artist, and he was saying, I can't believe you're sitting on all of this stuff. Like, why haven't you released it yet? And I'm a very firm believer that it will be released when it needs to be released. And for now, there's things that are ready and they are waiting. And it will happen, I believe, this year in due time. But it's there's other things that are falling into place first that will really make that, I think. I honestly believe that, like, it's my job to serve the song. It's my job to serve the art. Like, I'm receiving it.
I love that you actually, that's like your statement on your website, you know, Sam Stokes serving the song.
Yeah, it's like, because it's true.
It's your duty.
Yes, it is. And when you collaborate with someone, it's like we are coming in together to birth this child together. Like if at any point someone comes in and they have their ego, or it's about their opinion or whatever, that's when it's like, and I'll check myself too. Sometimes I'm like, oh, whoa, ego, take a walk. I do not need you right now.
You have to get out of the way.
It's like, you are not needed right now, please. So I really do feel like it's my job to support and facilitate the music as best as possible, and to champion it and be the voice for it in whatever way that I can. So yeah, things are falling into place, and then soon enough, it will all come out in its due time.
Well, you have a show coming up this week, February 21st, right? At Madame Siam for Breaking Sound.
Yeah.
Tell me about this show. Tell me, or is this something that is this your first performance for the year? Is this or just tell me anything about the show?
Sure. Yeah. No, it's gonna be a great show. It's at Madame Siam. Yeah. Tickets are $18 in advance, $23 at the door. It's all original music that I'm performing. It's all, I think it's like a 30-40 minute set that I'll be doing. Yeah, and it's just, I'm really looking forward to it. You know, it's been such a joy. I've been playing a lot the past few months, you know, doing quiet shows, private things here and there, you know, going to different smaller showcases and things like that. So I have been performing a lot the last few months, but this show is definitely going to be, I think, a bigger show. And so I'm really looking forward to it. The venue looks incredible. It's an incredible space. It's kind of like almost like a modern day circus kind of vibe. And it's going to be with 2 other artists that night. So I'm really looking forward to it. I think, you know, having come through the pandemic and stuff, it's been so wonderful to see the energy and the love and the community that's been coming from all the live shows that I've been going to recently. People are just so joyful. And if I can in any way help continue to light that fire in other people, that they go on with their week with a little bit more joy, a little bit more love, a little bit more light, then I'm happy.
I think you are someone that's not to be missed. I love seeing you perform. I can't wait to have you at the Truck Stop Mixtape Singer Songwriter Night in I think April. We said we're going to do
April.
this. That's going to be awesome. Let me ask you some silly question. If you had to, if you were like in a time machine that dropped you 50 something years into the future and you had to express in 15 seconds or less who you are and what you do and what you represent and where you come from, what would you say?
In 50 years?
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sam Stokes. I am a human. Thank you for this TED Talk here on this alien planet. It's so great to meet you. I tried the best that I could as a human to be able to express what the human experience is like. It's strange. We have some very interesting things that we're figuring out. We got better. We figured a lot of them out, but we're still working on it. We're still learning. And music seems to be one of our best medicines to help us figure out those emotions. So hopefully I did my part to contribute to that a little bit. Thank you for listening to this TED Talk.
Humans of the world, Sam Stokes. Thank you so much, Sam. You're the best.
Thank you. Appreciate you.